This is a follow-up lesson to some things that we've talked about in previous videos where we did given an x, find a y, and then given a y, find an x when you have an xy relationship or equation or function. Well, I thought it would be useful to have at least one video showing how this might show up in an application problem. All right, this has to do with a linear relationship, but the idea will be the same. All right, this first one says, this equation shows the relationship between the number of passenger cars in the United States in millions during a selected year. So I give you a year, you give me the number of cars, or I give you the number of cars, you tell me what year it was. There's a little twist to this problem because it says the year 1940 will be x equals 0. So we're changing the time scale. Instead of saying the year is 1940, we will say it is year 0. And if it was 1945, it would be year 5. If it was the year 2000, x would be 60. So it is x is the number of years since 1940. So we'll have to keep that in mind as well. The first part says, type in the equation and set a window. Okay, let's go to our grapher. And I already have it typed in. So if you want to follow along, then you could take a minute to go to the y equals. And for y1, type in 2.4 variable x plus 19.9. So x is the year since 1940, and y is the number of cars. That is very important. So I have typed it in, but I'm going to take a minute to remind myself. X is the years since 1940, and y is number of cars, and it is in millions. Now, anytime you use x and y in one of these problems, it is very useful to write down what x stands for and what y stands for. The other thing I want to do is go in and see what window I should use. So I'm going to do a zoom 6 to start with. Always start with a zoom 6. Oh, that's not a very good window. Why not? I do see the x-intercept, but I don't see the y-intercept. I believe it's up here. So I'll go to Window. And please don't think that you just always are going to be changing y max, even though it seems like it in my videos. I'm going to say 25. Let's see if that will be adequate. By changing my y max to 25, I now can see the x-intercept and the y-intercept, which is just a good starting place. All right, let's see what we're supposed to do now. So if you were asked, you would say, I left the x's from -10 to 10. Those are zeros. And I have the y's set at -10, and I chose 25. And somebody else might have a slightly different window. All right, according to this function, how many millions of cars? Now, how many millions of cars, that's y, were there in 1950? Now, that is almost x. X is 1950 minus 1940, or 10. Because remember, 1940, x will be 0. So in this problem, we are given x is 10, find y. How do we do that? We do it with table. All right, so back to my calculator. I go to the second of the graph key, which is table. And I can use delete if I don't want to have any old values in there. So I did. And I type in X is 10. 10 years after 1940. The answer is 43.9 million cars. 43.9, and it is in millions. All right. The next one says, according to this function, how many millions of cars, millions of cars, that's why, were there in 1996. So it's related to X, so it's going to be 1996 minus 1940, which is 56. So, given X equals 56, find Y. This is another case of table. So I will go to my grapher. I don't have to delete anything. I can just type in 56 as my next X entry, hit enter, and it is 154.3 million. 154.3 million. That's approximately, according to this equation, how many cars, U.S. cars there were on the road, I guess. All right, last part. In what year? Now, in what year has to do with X. Will the number of cars reach 200 million? That's why. So, this one is given Y equals 200. I know it's million, but I'm just going to type in 200. Whoops, sorry. Find X. How do I do this one? I do the Y equals, and I'll put in 200. Y2 will be that. And then I will do second of the trace key, which is calc. And I'll do number 5, which is intersect. So here we go. By the way, after I have this Y equals 200, I'm probably going to have to set a new window to see it. So here we go. Back to the Y equals. Go to the second one and put in 200. Now, if I go to graph and I am expecting to see a horizontal line cut across the Y-axis at 200, there is no way I'm going to see it. It is way, way up there. So window, again, Y max needs to be above 200. So I'm going to put 250. So I've changed my window. Now this diagonal line looks very different, and that's because of the change in how very far I am in the Y direction. Okay, so there's my Y equals 2.4x plus 19.9. There's my Y equals 200, and they're not intersecting. But I believe they're probably intersecting somewhere out there. So I have to go to window again, and this time change X max. Well, what should I change it to? I don't know. 50? Maybe. Let's see. Remember, this is the number of years. All right, the graph looks a little different. And there's my Y equals 200. They still aren't connecting. So go back to window. X max needs to be enlarged again. I'm going to go ahead and put 100. I don't know. And you have to try, sometimes error, and try again. There we go. That looks great. So here's my function that connects the number of cars in millions to the year since 1940. And this is 200 million cars. So I will do second of the trace key, which is calc. Number 5. I can travel along this one, or I could use up or down and travel along the red line. And enter, enter, enter. And I get that X is, and I wrote that and I didn't even see it. I think it would round, I'm just going to say 75 years. There should be some rounding instructions, and there aren't, but 75. Now, X is 75, but what year is it? X is the number of years since 1940. So the year will be 75 plus 1940, which is 2015. So according to this model, a few years ago, we already had 200 million cars in the United States. So I hope this helped a little bit in putting it in perspective. Given an X, find a Y, and given a Y, find an X, when it's in the context of a question. And one of the most important things to do is at the very beginning, make sure you recognize in the story, what does X represent? What does Y represent? And in my future videos, when I'm going to do this, I will always make it a point of highlighting this. All right, that's it for an application example.